We can do that. Okay, so who here does not own any cryptocurrency? So are we preaching to the converted or to the new? Don't be shy, don't be shy. Okay, well, don't worry. I'm not going to be talking to you about cryptocurrencies at all. I'm going to be talking to you rather about decentralization. But to start with, let's have a quick laugh.
What? Not knowing where to put my money for retirement.
There are just too many options. 401ks, IRAs, savings. It's so confusing.
Well, you know where I put my money?
Where?
Bitcoin.
What's Bitcoin?
Bitcoin is the first decentralized digital cryptocurrency that works without a central bank.
Well, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, and it's so simple to use. Transactions take place through the use of cryptography and are verified by network nodes and recorded in an immutable public distributed ledger called a blockchain. What could be simpler than that?
Nothing. It sounds great.
Right. So is it like investing in stocks?
Kind of, but not at all.
Well, I'm on board.
Really? Because I have so many more questions.
Not me.
So how much do one of these Bitcoins cost?
$17,000.
$17,000? That's insane.
Sounds like a bargain.
Ugh. And how do you keep track of these things' values?
Just check the internet. So far today, its value has gone up $1,000, and now it's down $800, and now it's up $500.
Sounds like you can't lose.
You absolutely can, Margaret.
How do I buy Bitcoins?
It's easy. Just go online and give them your credit card number.
Give who your credit card number?
Bitcoin, and then let the internet do what it does.
What does it do exactly?
It Bitcoins.
Here's my credit card.
No!
Well, if you're not already initiated into the whole crypto economy, this video was put online by SNL at the height of the crypto bull market, just before the little mini bubble kind of burst. And my point tonight is that if you're here to invest in cryptocurrencies just to make a quick buck, well, you might be disappointed, but you really should nonetheless be sitting in this room and should stick around, because there's a much bigger story behind this than just a quick get-rich-quick scheme. Now, in my work, in my day job, I am a trained analyst with Flux Trends, and what we look at is the intersection of consumer and technology trends. And one of the big drivers of what we've seen going on is this first wave of digitization. This is like the prequel to what's going on now with the fourth industrial revolution. There were a few things that happened in the early 2000s that really set us up for where we are now, socially and economically speaking. The first thing was, of course, the advent of the internet for everyone. The second thing was Mark Zuckerberg and the advent of Facebook, which suddenly connected us to each other and made us all publishers, not just consumers of media information. The third one was the millennial generation. That's my generation, for better or for worse. We arrived on the scene, and we grew up with some expectations, particularly with regards to how special and unique we all are, and that brought forth a huge trend towards mass customization, or this sense of individual identity and not wanting the Henry Ford one car in every garage. And the fourth thing that happened to get us to this point where decentralization and connection really started to come into play in our everyday lives was the Great Recession of 2008. So as you can see, this wasn't driven by social or technological change so much as economic change. And that 2008 recession has had a large ripple effect, particularly for the interaction between consumers and the financial industry. Millennials and Gen Z consumers are hugely distrustful of the big formal financial industry. And for good reason. We all know what happened after 2008. A whole lot of really rich bankers got some really big bailouts and carried on making some really big mistakes in terms of printing money and devaluing all of our futures through inflation and things like quantitative easing. Now, what we've seen come out of that, the social media, this digitization of everything, and this desire to connect as individual consumers and get something unique for ourselves, is we've seen a whole lot of startups come on board. And what a lot of these startups, these digital startups that you hear all about all over Silicon Valley, everything from Airbnb to Uber, what they all have in common is that they are squeezing margins out of the system. They're going after any sort of entity in the value chain that they are perceiving as having too much fat, who's adding fat and not adding value. Where there's a too high cost, there's an opportunity for a competitor to come on board and to start reducing that cost for people. Now, I'm sure you all know in South Africa with Uber, 5 years ago, did any of you ever take a taxi cab? Probably not. But I'm willing to take a bet that almost everyone here in this room has used Uber because they've managed to bring that cost down to a point where it's relevant and useful to the consumer. They've extracted fat from the system. And this means that formal financial players and formal players in pretty much every sector across the economy, whatever industry you work in, are under pressure to give more value and not to charge as high costs. And what this has resulted in is what we call the collapse of the value chain. We're seeing middlemen in every industry being squeezed out of existence. So if you want a good example of that, what we're going to talk about today is this rise of the peer-to-peer economy. And a great industry to look at when we go into that, to illustrate how this works, is the governmental industry and how actual countries function.
Alipay is operated by Ant Financial of China, one of the world's largest fintech companies. Alipay is one of the most popular payment methods in the world. As the name suggests, Alipay is a way to pay for goods and services online. But now it's more than that. It's a global lifestyle super app. It is used by more than 5% of the world's population. Let us follow a young couple in Shanghai to show it in action. Amy and Dayu are going shopping. They use Shosho to find nearby merchants and special offers. Amy shows her unique Alipay code and has it scanned. Done. More than 60% of the transactions processed by Alipay are conducted on mobile devices. Alipay is at the forefront of a new cashless society. Alipay is helping businesses large and small to connect to a cashless world and the massive number of Alipay users. Dayu has just enjoyed an exclusive 5% discount. Across the city, Amy's mother is a keen investor. Yuebao is an online wealth management product which offers users higher returns on their current account balance. And Fortune is a comprehensive wealth management platform that allows users to manage their finances using an array of products, no matter how small their investments are. With stock, she can monitor her position anywhere at any time. Travel is another key function offered by Alipay. Users with a higher Juma credit score can book a hotel without a deposit. Actually, Juma Credit offers individual credit filing and scoring services in China. Big World shares overseas merchants' information and special offers. And Ali Trip offers travel packages. More and more merchants across China and around the world are accepting Alipay.
Okay, so I showed you that to show how simple and seamless lives are becoming for people, particularly people coming out of Asia and China. So Alipay is what we call a super app. It's great, it's very convenient, and as you can see, it has put a whole lot of intermediaries and formerly fat middlemen out of business. Everyone from travel agents to taxi drivers to financial advisors and everyone in between, you see they have all been now replaced by this super app. The great thing for the consumer is you never have to leave the app. Instead of having 7 different apps on your phone, your details are logged into one. You never have to leave it in order to pay for something, in order to get any service that you want. But although this has squeezed a whole lot of middlemen out of the surface or out of the loop, what it has not done is actually decentralized power to the end user. So that's one of the things I want to talk to you about today. There's the taking middlemen out of the loop. That's great. It's reducing costs for all of us. But at the same time, technology can work in one of 2 ways. It can either centralize power behind that, as is what is happening with this Alipay app. Between Alipay and WeChat, its competitor, 1 in every 7 human beings on the planet is logged into these apps at any given time. So that's huge. That's huge centralization of power. Or there are other technologies that can come on board, or other systems of governance and ways of working together that can actually share those benefits of this new, leaner economy with more people and empower more people to be part of that conversation. So just to go a little bit deeper into what's going on there with those sort of apps is to get back to governments and how those are working. Now, when you've centralized all that information about people, because of course, as you're using these apps throughout your day, through every different touch point, every different transaction you have, there's a whole lot of data being collected on you. Now in China, the government is sharing some of that data to build what they call social credit scores. Now these social credit scores are not just gleaning data from the apps that people use, they're actually gleaning them from the streets. So they're getting them from cameras that are set up all across the country. They've got databases on citizens' voice, the way they walk, called gate databases, and of course facial recognition databases. And all these data points are combined into a government-issued social credit score that then limits or grants access to a whole lot of things in life in China. Everything from who you can marry to where your kids can go to school, or even if you're allowed to purchase an airline ticket to leave the country. So that's a huge centralization of power that's going on there. And then there's a different way that power is starting to be centralized, not in the hands of big states, but rather in the hands of big corporations. So on the screen there is just an artist's illustration of Alphabet, that's Google's holding company's plans for a smart city called Sidewalk Labs in Toronto. So this city is going to be highly connected, it's going to do lots of great things, it's going to be hugely optimized for traffic flow, and just general lifestyle is going to be optimized in order to give people the best possible quality of life that a connected street and city interface can do. Now, we're actually starting to see a little bit of this going on in South Africa right now. Vumatel, the internet company, has started putting up security cameras all over Johannesburg's northern suburbs, and I believe they're going to be rolling them out quite a lot more across the country. And that's a private company that's now collecting data in order to, what they say, to make South African streets safer and to cut down on crime, but it is still, once again, centralizing a whole lot of data, and in today's world, data really is power, into just one or two companies' hands. But it doesn't have to be that way. There's another sort of model of governance that we can look at for countries and for companies and for ourselves as individuals and the way we work with the financial sector too. And a great example of that would be Taiwan. So Taiwan is actually almost colonized by China, so some people would say, and it's very close in terms of geographic region and got a very similar historical culture behind it. But they've taken a radically different approach to governance. Instead of having a top-down, centralized, totalitarian government that is centralizing everybody's data and then enforcing rules through the system or through the network that they've built of control, Taiwan has done something very, very different. What they've done is they've invested in developing a tech-based platform that really does distribute democracy in a whole different way. And not just democracy of going to the polls once every 4 years and, taking a bet or taking a gamble, really, on a couple of individuals to rule you for the next 4 years. Rather, what they've done is built a collaborative platform that gets people to have real conversations. So a great example here would be, as opposed to Britain, when they voted for Brexit, people had to vote, do I want in or do I want out? And that was it. There was no conversation. And we've all seen what's happened there. What Taiwan did when something controversial came up, and that was, should we allow Uber drivers to come into our country and take over the jobs of our current taxi drivers? Instead of asking people to simply vote yes or no, they developed a platform for people to converse with each other and to create statements that could then be voted on. And through this process, what started out as being a very polarizing issue got boiled down into not a yes or no, but rather, yes, we can, but let's do this too. And they boiled it down to 20 statements that then became the framework of the laws for how Uber was going to be governed in this country. So can you imagine if a process like that, completely collaborative, open to every citizen, was put in place here in South Africa? Think about some of the contentious issues. People would be able to really listen to each other and hear what's going on in order to create or co-create the laws that we all have to abide to. Now, they did some clever things here. They put certain things in place, like you couldn't troll someone on the system. You could simply vote for a statement or not. And then as statements became more popular, they sort of consolidated them into the most trending ones and then boiled them down until they found some consensus. So this is a radically different model of governance, but it can be applied to a whole lot of other sectors too. So let's take a quick look at an example from the travel industry. So not so long ago, if you wanted to book a holiday somewhere, you'd have to call a guy like this on the phone, and he would look it up on his little computer, or probably actually phone someone on his plastic telephone over there, in order to book your flights and to book your hotels. You had to go through this little middleman. And he, of course, through his power and the big airlines' power, was able to, take a lot of your money out of your pocket in exchange for this little service. Then, with the advent of Airbnb, things changed. They became a lot better for us as consumers. We could now pay less money. You pay a much smaller commission to the Airbnb platform, and you can book directly into someone's home. You didn't have to go to a stuffy old hotel. But things are evolving even further once again. So we've got a competitor to Airbnb that's come out of Israel, of all places, called Cool Cousin. And what they've done is they've understood that Airbnb might have democratized the tourism industry for the consumer, but they didn't democratize the tourism industry for the hotelier or for the person that was actually providing the room. Because as we know, if you want to rent a room out through Airbnb, you are basically beholden to the Airbnb platform. You have to abide by Airbnb's terms and give away a fair chunk of your profit to Airbnb. Cool Cousin is built on blockchain technology and based on a cryptocurrency. And this means that the platform is able to let all the service providers, all the tour operators, and all the accommodation providers actually have a share in the profits of the platform. So that's real decentralization. And then we move on again to your person. So we've spoken about countries, we've spoken about companies, and now to talk about yourself as an individual. So The Economist has said that our data, all that data that's been collected through super apps, and yes, there's one coming to the West too. Facebook is planning on consolidating Instagram, Facebook, and Messenger into one super app and actually issuing its own cryptocurrency. They're not quite sure what it's going to be called yet, maybe Facecoin or Bitface, we're not quite sure there. But that's going to basically be a competitor in the West space to that video I showed you earlier with Alipay and the WeChat type ecosystems. Highly centralized and highly exploitative of people's data really behind it. So data really can be compared to oil, as The Economist says, as the new resource, the new commodity that's being traded around the world. And your data is being traded and companies are profiting from it. Google's profiting on it when it sells it to a marketer. The market is profiting when they use that data in order to sell you some of their products. But you, as the provider of that data, are not necessarily getting the benefit of it. In fact, your data could be being used against you, to discriminate against you. Like I'm sure you all heard on 702 over the last few days about the scandal that's come out at FNB on how consumers or homeowners of certain colors are being charged higher interest rates due to the FNB's algorithmic process behind it. So that's an example how your data is literally being used against you. If you want other examples there, MasterCard has developed software that can tell how fat you are, and they've suggested selling that to airlines in order to allow the airlines to decide how much to charge you. So if you're a bit fatter, according to the MasterCard algorithm, based on what you've been purchasing, not going to gym enough, buying too many burgers, they can actually then increase your price. Once again, your data being used against you. But we're seeing a change there too in terms of the democratization of data. And giving your data back to you is a basic human right. So as a competitor or an alternative to Google, you can go along to BitClave, which is once again a blockchain-based search engine. And what BitClave will do is it will pay you every time someone serves you an ad. So instead of Google collecting the money when you click on an ad, you get that money. So that's, once again, real decentralization and distribution. And then you've got the guy on the screen there. He's the governor of California. And he has proposed that companies should be forced to pay all consumers for the data that they use. He's trying to get this legislation pushed through in very proactive California. They're not quite sure how it's going to work, but it's definitely a trend to watch as consumers or individuals start insisting on getting their data back. He has proposed that data be classified as labor, which means that any laborer or employee has to get paid for the service that they provide to someone else. So at the end of the day, to end off with my talk, I'm not going to speak too much about money itself and how it fits into the centralization and decentralization question, but we really have a choice sitting here in this room. Do we want to continue with a centralized financial system that goes through a Federal Reserve or a central bank? Centralized, once again, where someone else has control over your money, what it's worth, and how much of it there is in circulation? Or do we want to try something different? And with that, I'll hand over to the next speaker.